people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
News. Okay, we'll start with this. Reactions are pouring in to the upcoming Claressa Shields versus Danielle Perkins fight. Veteran fighter and friend of the channel, Zarinia McCoy, reacted by saying, easy work for Shields. Perkins is only 5-0 and 42 years old. Has never fought in a 10-round fight before. Should be another dominant performance from the champion.
5-0, 42 years old.
A Twitter user that goes by the name Nano reacted by saying, let Claressa Shields fans sit here and tell you she's the greatest woman of all times and she's fighting for legacy with this fight. Another Twitter user that goes by the name Diego Myra stated, I've never been one to disrespect women's boxing or Claressa Shields, but it has to be noted that beyond the top 3 in any division, it's a huge drop-off. Serrano versus Taylor was the benchmark. Mayer versus Baumgartner were great too, but this fight isn't it at all.
Did you know that they made this for Undisputed?
The fight that Claressa Shields is about to have in the heavyweight division was made an undisputed title fight after 3 of the 4 major sanctioning bodies manufactured 3 additional belts to add to this contest.
Out of thin air.
Out of the clear blue sky, 3 belts with no backstory, no lineage, no one is holding them, so that if Claressa Shields wins the fight and becomes an undisputed champion at another weight, we're supposed to hold this up to who? To Katie Taylor?
And pretend like it's the same.
We're supposed to pretend that Claressa is now doing at heavyweight what Gabby Fundora just did at flyweight, or what Senicia Estrada did at minimum weight.
What Tina Ruprecht is in the process of doing at atom weight.
At the risk of stating the obvious, no, it's not the same. And the talent pool at the higher weights, particularly at heavyweight, is a lot more shallow than what you find at the lower weights, which is why it's so much easier to unify titles and become undisputed at the weights where Claressa campaigns, because there's nobody up there, and the sanctioning bodies are basically giving you belts.
Gift wrap.
And this is supposed to substantiate the argument that not only is Claressa the pound-for-pound numero uno in the sport right now, but she's the greatest woman of all times for competing and campaigning in these barren weight classes.
Please.
The other day, I talked about how Danielle Perkins herself views Amanda Serrano as the greatest of all times, not Claressa Shields, and the adverse reaction that Claressa Shields had, that, as you would expect, she started tearing down Amanda Serrano over what is Danielle Perkins' opinion. Per usual, I talked about it here on the channel, and the odd guy wants to start piping up and start defending Claressa. Guy who goes by the name Seeking the Red Button said, I just want you to give the GWOAT her props. It's incredible that she's able to sell as many tickets as she does as a headliner.
She doesn't sell a lot of tickets. What is he talking about?
She's not fighting on the undercard of a YouTuber like Amanda Serrano.
Amanda actually headlines her own shows, and when she does, she sells more tickets than Claressa. The fight that she was going to have in Puerto Rico before it got canceled, that fight sold out.
Why did it get canceled?
Because Amanda got an eye injury right before the fight.
Seeking the Red Button continued, she's not fighting on the undercard of a YouTuber like Amanda Serrano, but she's done well all on her own.
Bullshit.
The only reason that Claressa got the fight for a gold medal in the Olympics is because of Katie Taylor. Katie Taylor opened that door. Claressa didn't do that on her own.
Out of the amateurs into the pros, Claressa was already boxing on a premium cable network in Showtime.
She didn't go through years of nominal purses fighting under the radar on the chicken gizzard circuit like Amanda Serrano did. If anybody paid their dues here, it's Amanda Serrano, who was in boxing before the major promoters started caring about the women, before the major networks, before the big money.
You want us to look at Clarissa the way we look at Amanda, the way we look at Katie. You want us to look at her the way we look at them so bad.
While 3 major sanctioning bodies literally manufacture belts to give to her.
Now it's for undisputed.
So that when she goes in there and fights a 42-year-old that only has 5 professional bouts and not a single one of them was even a 10-rounder, guys like you can come to me and talk about how she's undisputed at another weight with no context, with no backstory, because you don't even watch women's boxing.
You don't give a shit about the sport or the other girls.
If you did, you wouldn't be saying this shit. If you did, you'd know how stupid you sound. You keep trying to force feed me and everybody else this idea that Clarissa's the greatest woman of all time.
Not fighting fighters like this. Not at these weight classes. I'm sorry, but that's just reality. The real talent in women's boxing is and always was at the lower weights.
And that doesn't mean that Clarissa's not good in her own right. She's all right, but she's certainly not the greatest woman of all times.
Your Excellency Turkey Al-Sheikh, sent Top Rank an offer, and it was a good offer. I mean, a good offer, and he turned it down for whatever reason. He turned it down. It was for far more than the offer that he proposed. I mean, for the kind of money that Turkey offered him, I would have to say, yeah, I don't think that he wants to fight me because, I don't know. I mean, it made all the sense in the world.
The latest from Devin Haney, who's currently in the United Kingdom, seems to have devolved that entire Teofimo Lopez situation into a bona fide case of he said, she said, because Bob Arum and the people at Top Rank said they made Devin an offer to take the fight.
Devin didn't take it.
But now Devin says that Turkey Al-Sheikh made an offer to make the fight.
Teofimo didn't take it.
His Excellency's name is not one that you can throw around all willy-nilly in the sport, since he's very much involved in what's happening. And if Devin says that Turkey made a play to do the fight, I have reason to believe him unless Turkey himself denies it.
See if he does.
And this news is coming to us at a time where yet another fight involving Teofimo and another fighter has failed to materialize. The Subriel Matias fight that we talked about in a previous video.
Nothing is happening with this kid. Nothing's working.
The common denominator in these fights that are not happening, that are not materializing, is Teofimo Lopez, leaving me so inclined to believe that, well, he's the problem. He doesn't want to fight.
It's all for optics. It's all to get people talking, but he doesn't want to fight.
Newly installed WBO president Gustavo Olivieri took to his social media and stated, in light of the uncertainty regarding Teofimo Lopez's career, it is in the best interest of boxing and the 140-pound division recommending to the WBO Championships Committee that Barboza versus Catterall be sanctioned for the interim title and mandatory, subject to specific conditions and time frame, to fight Lopez to terminate the interim champion status and have only one world champion in the 140-pound division. The show must go on.
What does that mean?
What might seem like a reiteration of what we already knew basically indicates that they're going to move on that as soon as the outcome is decided between Jack Catterall and Arnold Barboza. Whoever wins that fight, Teofimo can expect an order to come down shortly after. This PSA is intended to inform Teofimo Lopez that he doesn't have all the time in the world to be indecisive, to walk away from fight after fight. Very soon, he will find himself under orders from the WBO to satisfy his mandatory, whoever that might be. And if he doesn't, then you know what happens next. You're not allowed to hold up this division.
He's WBO champion.
You could have made a fight with Devin. You could have made a fight with Subriel. You've had time to do it, and you squandered it. You don't want to fight, for whatever reason.
Pretty soon you're gonna have to.
And it is in the best interests of boxing, as Gustavo Olivieri put it, because don't you notice that whenever American fighters are involved, fights are not happening. This hurts the sport.
The market.
Never mind the he said, she said between Teofimo and Devin for what would have been a voluntary title defense. You've got a mandatory coming up. While Teofimo spends his free time on social media,
uploading videos and all of those infantile hijinks doing the rounds on podcasts.
talking about this guy, fight with this guy and that guy, none of which seems to be happening, pretty much wasting everybody's time. That's what he's doing. Well, you can waste your own time, but you don't need the brown belt to do that.
You want to be indecisive? You don't need the brown belt while you're indecisive.
So much of the American boxing community's energy goes into talking about fights that aren't even happening. Who's in the right and who's in the wrong. A convoluted mess.
To the point where you don't even care anymore. There's nothing to get excited about.
Spirited debates about elements in a situation that does not result in a fight. To the point where who even cares anymore? It's just more of the same.
I wouldn't be mad at all if the WBO decided to strip Teofimo.
If that's what it comes to, it's not like he was going to unify titles with anybody at 140 anyway. At this point, with the way that he's behaving, you're just in the way.
Move!
Men's junior middleweight news, the people at Boxing News ask, what has happened to Errol Spence Jr.? Spence's issue is that he split from his trainer, Derek James. The split was not amicable, as James sued him for unpaid wages. He claimed Spence owed him for the Crawford fight. Spence has also struggled to find his next opponent.
No, he hasn't. We've known who his next opponent is supposed to be for some months now.
He's been linked with a fight against WBC and WBO junior middleweight champion Sebastian Fundora, but the fight has not been agreed upon, leaving questions over whether Spence will return. The Truth has secured his financial future, meaning he does not need to fight again. He also suffered extensive punishment in the Crawford fight.
Well, how do we know he doesn't need to fight again?
We don't.
That's a presupposition. That's an assumption.
The only reason for taking another fight would be to not go out on a loss. There is an incentive to run things back with Crawford, but Crawford has his eyes on fighting Canelo Alvarez at 168. Since Spence does not have a belt, it makes no sense for him to take that bout. Spence has also gotten involved in the promotional side of boxing. He has Frank Martin signed to his management company. Spence promoted him for his fight against Gervonta Davis. Tank stopped Martin to give the latter his first professional loss. While that may be the case, Spence enjoyed seeing the other side of boxing.
And Spence's mindset?
It is something he could pursue once he retires from the sport. Spence is also on record saying the 2 car accidents he suffered have not left him the same. That leaves him in a tough position, as coming back for another fight could prove detrimental. But fighters are known for wanting to push the boundaries. Despite being a former unified welterweight champion, boxers are only as good as their last fight. Spence's performance showed that he was nowhere near capable of what he usually does.
That's not fair.
It's not fair to Terence Crawford and the victory that he has over Errol. You see, after Errol's car accident, when he fought Danny Garcia,
They were saying that Errol is back. Errol is all the way back. And when he moved on from that and fought Yordenis Lugas, busted his eye all up.
they were saying that's what he's going to do to Terence Crawford. That Errol Spence Jr. is all the way back, the eye collector is back, and he's going to do to Terence what he just did to Lugas. So let's not start focusing on the car accident now.
Stop it.
A lot of people take it lightly just because I came back and fought and all that, but that's serious stuff. It's not too many people that go high speed in a Ferrari and get thrown from a Ferrari, land on solid concrete, and still be there to talk today, still survive, still be coherent, and everything. That was traumatic and brutal that I went through. I've always been rating him, Crawford, highly. I've rated him super high. It definitely wasn't my night, but you know, I definitely want to get that back, Spence stated.
It's not gonna happen.
Rumors abound. Veteran boxing scribe Dan Raphael stated, per a source involved, the target date for Fundora versus Spence's junior middleweight bout is March 29th to headline a PBC on Prime pay-per-view at the MGM Grand in Vegas. The deal is not 100% done yet, but if it gets done, that is the plan as of now, the source said.
It's according to Dan. But according to Errol Spence Jr. himself, via his Instagram stories, he said that's not my date or location.
So then what the hell is going on here?
Let's slow down.
If the question is what happened to Errol Spence Jr., Terence Crawford happened to Errol Spence Jr.
He got exposed.
So if he wouldn't have fought Terence Crawford in the summer of 2023, and he would have went ahead with that Keith Thurman fight instead, we wouldn't be sitting here now asking what happened to Errol. Because that's not what people were asking after he beat Danny Garcia. That's not what people were asking when he beat Yordenis Salugas. That if he would have stayed in the winner's bracket and never fought Terrence, fought Keith Thurman instead, we wouldn't be sitting here now asking what happened to Errol. Terrence is what happened to Errol.
Terrence exposed him.
Exposed that they're not on the same level, and they never were. All those fighters that he was fighting over there on the PBC side of things for some years, putting distance between himself and Terrence Crawford, were never on the level of Terrence Crawford. And they knew that.
That's why they were sandbagging it for so long.
Because they knew those fighters don't pose the threat to Errol that Terrence poses to Errol. And that Errol, good as he might be, he's just not on the level with Terrence. That's what happened.
That's all.
It's not a mystery. Though if you find it jarring that Errol has fallen so far from grace and he's struggling to pick himself back up, that has more to do with your perception of him than the fighter himself.
Than Errol.
What you're struggling to do is make sense of what you thought versus what you saw, when maybe what you thought was off base from the beginning. The risk of sounding like a broken record, it's the same with Deontay Wilder. You thought all this stuff about this guy before the second Tyson Fury fight.
You put him on a pedestal.
And that has more to do with you and your perception of that fighter than the fighter themselves. The signs were all there, the writing was on the wall, you just didn't want to read it.
It's the same with Errol.
So if the question is, what happened to Errol Spence Jr., Terrence Crawford is what happened. What happened to Errol? Errol got exposed.
Simple.
And now if it's taken Errol well over a year now to try and come back, that has more to do with the PBC's failing infrastructure, the way the situation has changed.
Sebastian Fundora won those 2 belts in March of last year, but we're closer to March of this one.
Why is this taking so long? A lack of resources, a lack of money, a lack of fight dates is the answer. What I spent all last year telling you is still true this one.
They're not operating at the same capacity anymore.
And I don't even think Errol Spence Jr. should keep fighting, because I don't think Errol's heart is in it. It's a dangerous game, and this ain't the kind of profession to where you can just punch in the clock and go through the motions. You're gonna get hurt.
This is not a fairy tale.
Boxing insider Rick Glacier reacted to the rumors of Spence and Sebastian fighting in March by saying, hopefully, this March 29th Fundora vs. Spence fight date is finally real, as the very likable Sebastian Fundora has waited 1 full year for this fight to finally take place in order to destroy a completely shot Errol Spence. And before anyone insults me, let the fight play out. Fundora by destruction.
Hard to see it any other way. The night of, if they actually do fight in either March or April,
May.
sometime later on.
It'll be closer to 2 years from Errol Spence Jr.'s last ring appearance. 2 years since his last fight.
What do you think is gonna happen to him?
Close to 2 years removed from the sport, at a new weight, breaking in a new trainer, against an awkward fighter, arguably the most awkward fighter in the entire junior middleweight division, coming off a devastating loss.
What do you think is gonna happen to him?
If this actually happens, since Errol Spence Jr. is saying that's not the date or location for his next fight.
But that is the opponent.
Sebastian Fundora may have his flaws and drawbacks, but this is not the kind of guy that you get off the couch to fight, especially under Errol's circumstances. In my honest opinion, I don't think Errol should be fighting. Not this guy.
But this has been the story for months, and that bit of it hasn't changed.
Even if the date has, more time has passed, he shouldn't be fighting Sebastian in his first fight at 154. But that's what he wants to do, and by all accounts, he's courting disaster.
Whenever this fight happens.